You can make an interesting story less interesting by putting it all into one strand. And then. Adam Hochschild.
You're listening to Writing Roots, brought to you by Aspen House Publishing.
Welcome to Writing Roots. I'm Lee Hull.
And I'm Lee Esses. One of the ways that you can really start to play with how your reader interprets your text in the writing is not with the writing itself, but the order in which it's introduced. And one of the biggest ways that we're talking about today is through dialogue. Not only what the character is saying, but the text around it can be vital in how quick or slow or in-depth these scenes are, simply by putting the dialogue tag at the beginning, in the middle, or at the end, or excluding it entirely.
There are three main ways to identify who is talking within a story. You have your dialogue tags, he said, she said. You have your action tags, also known as action beats. And then you have just punctuation.
Action tags are, of course, my favorite, where we are seeing the character do something, and that buys us exactly the right amount of time between the first and last bit of dialogue, or between the two characters speaking. It's a lot more flexible when putting your story together, because you can make that super short, super long.
You also have to consider that where your tag is placed within the dialogue will change the rhythm of the moment. How you use each one of these will also change the rhythm. Whether you use just a dialogue tag, whether you use it in combination with an action beat, maybe just punctuation, all of it's going to change the rhythm and pace.
Even something as simple as putting that dialogue or action beat in the middle of someone saying a thing adds end quotation marks, lots of commas or periods, and beginning quotation marks. That physical space that those characters take up changes how quickly your reader is absorbing and going through this information. So a simple action tag would be something like, Vlad was right. A low chuckle rumbled out of Isaac. This is entertaining.
And then you can have a dialogue tag in combination with an action beat with, Vlad was right, Isaac said. A low chuckle rumbled out of him. This is entertaining.
Or if you want that line to be delivered very fast without a pause in between the two sentences basically at all, you would not put anything in the middle there and just goes, Vlad was right. This is entertaining. Each of those changes how your reader interprets how the character delivered the line.
So let's break into these three kinds of dialogue tags, talk about what they are, how to use them, and when you need to use them to convey certain ideas. Overall, the slowest, and I'm going to put a little asterisk next to this one, way to convey your information is through action tags or action beats.
This one will give you the slowest opportunity if there's a long pause between this bit of dialogue and that bit of dialogue. I like this one again because it's super flexible. You can make it short or make it long and time that out exactly as the reader would experience it because of their approximate reading pace.
So these action tags are things like a low chuckle rumbled out of Isaac. It identifies the speaker while still giving them something to do. And I like these because it gives you a route to discuss the setting and their environment, and it can put your characters into a place and give them things to interact with, aside from just looking like blank characters on a stage staring at each other.
This is also where some of my favorite opportunities for subtext come in handy, is you can have a character doing a thing and that's his tell. Or you can have them looking at one person but speaking to another person. These kinds of things in your action tags will help convey what the character is actually thinking as compared to what they're saying.
And just because this is technically the slowest pace doesn't mean it has to be slow paced. By using action tags, you break up long chunks of dialogue to improve the rhythm, make it a little bit faster, avoid exposition. You can also use these to remove unnecessary dialogue tags. We don't need to have, what are you going to do? Stab me? He said. You could just, what are you going to do? Stab me? And then do some sort of taunting gesture.
This is also helpful for when you have 3 people speaking more or less at once. They're discussing what kind of pizza they want to have. And it's not always clear because of the character choice. We're just meeting these characters. We don't know that she's vegan and that he's a carnivore, whatever. So having these tags will help us identify the characters beyond what they're just saying and get to know the characters, especially when it's not a pitter-patter of dialogue back and forth where you don't need anything at all.
Now the next kind, this is the medium pace one. It can be fast, it can be slow, depending on how you use it. And I honestly think that these get a bad rap, but this is your simple dialogue tags. The he said, she said, they said, whatever.
This is mostly to simply identify who's speaking. The word said has sort of become invisible in the grand scheme of things. We'll notice if it's missing, but people don't stop to read the word. They just see the name attached to the dialogue and move on. So this moves it into that medium slot pretty firmly. There's still something happening there, so it's not a fluid single breath kind of thing. But we are just going, yep, that's Brad saying the thing, moving on.
This is also best when you have a conversation going, probably with multiple people, but it doesn't need a lot of action or setting. Maybe they are stuck inside of a carriage. They can't really do a whole lot, move around a whole lot, and you want to keep the pace up. But there's some important information that they're conveying through the dialogue.
Something you also keep in mind for dialogue tags is kind of instructions to the actor in your head of how you want the line delivered. So you can say something as simple as, they said, or they asked. This is interpreted to be in a more neutral tone. Whereas something that conveys volume would be shouted or whispered. This is starting to give us information about how they said the thing.
You can also have the tone conveyed through this. He snapped, or she taunted, giving us an idea of how they're going about speaking without having to describe the taunting motion or describe however they look, especially if you want to keep the pace going. And it also can help convey how quickly the person is speaking, whether they're drawling or if they stammered or if they're speaking rapidly. There are words to use to describe that with just he drawled.
And then the last and quickest way to approach how you address who's saying what when is your punctuation only. That is doing the end quotes and the new paragraph, and that lets us know someone different is speaking. We don't have to know who's doing it because we can guess by the context around it. She likes chocolate, he wants vanilla. If we're saying chocolate, vanilla, then we know who's saying which one.
It's usually best for a conversation with just 2 people where keeping track of that back and forth is easier. Sometimes you can use 3 if the voices are very distinct, or they are each arguing a separate point of something and you know who's arguing which.
Or if one of them's silent. I'm just going to throw that out there. If the rest of the characters are like, oh, this is good tea, I'm going to watch these 2 characters argue. You can have other characters in the scene, but if we know who these 2 are, then we don't need to continually identify them.
Yeah. This is my favorite thing to use when things are getting really intense. When there is an argument or a need to convey information quickly between the characters, like somebody's just discovered a bomb and they need to defuse it or whatever, and you don't want extra words cluttering the important information. Punctuation only is very good to use, and it helps remove overuse of dialogue tags. Like if you have this quick back and forth, please do not use he said, she said, he said, she said, he said, she said, he said, she said over and over again. Do not do it. Please trust your readers that they will be able to follow the back and forth.
I will say, make sure you're clear on who is starting it off and who is ending it up. we see an action tag, a dialogue tag attached to the first part of this quick rhythm. This fairy said, make it blue. And then we can see just make it pink, make it blue, make it pink. At the end, you identify who said or did the last thing in the argument before something changed. This makes it super clear without needing to rely on the other things that we talked about today.
It basically confirms to the reader that, yes, they did follow correctly. Now, if your readers are identifying that they didn't follow it correctly, and they didn't match up at that last sentence, then you may need to look at where things went awry. Maybe you didn't do a paragraph break where you needed to, or something. Overall, every single one of these has a purpose. They have a point. You need to use each one of these styles to craft your rhythm. Use all of these together to regulate the pace of your scenes, to draw focus to important details, especially when you combine it with the sentence and paragraph lengths, which we will be talking about next episode.
So I encourage you to play with these. Think of a scene where you can have just punctuation only. Think of a scene where the real story is told outside of the dialogue, as compared to what the characters are lying to each other about or whatever. Play with this, bring it to your writing club or your editor, show it off to a couple of other writers you know, and see if that plays the way you're hoping it will. And I think you'll find that this will quickly become one of your favorite ways of formatting this kind of scene, is understanding what's slow, what's fast, that push-pull, and you'll start to really enjoy it. And that'll make it so much easier to
write selfishly.
If you have a question or comment for our hosts or a topic you'd like us to cover, send us an email at writingroots@aspenhousepublishing.com or find us on Facebook by searching for Aspen House Publishing.